Hey friendos, it's DW here. Just want to do a kind of a wrap-up video on the whole Game Jam thing. I've been sitting on this for a few days. Game Jam's been over, game's been out, Car Scientist has been out for a while. I released kind of a closing kind of initial thoughts, and now I've kind of pieced some stuff together, taken some time to kind of reflect, played some of the games, and I wanted to share those ideas with you. Kind of do sort of one of my old review retrospective style things, kind of a Scrum style review and Scrum retrospective. Not pure Scrum by any stretch, but just in that kind of vein. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. For those of you that are new, over the course of November, I submitted my first game to my first Game Jam, the GitHub Game Off 2019 Game Jam hosted at itch.io, and I actually managed to get a game out the door using some constraints and some different things along the way. And did a vlog series about it, and now I'm tying it all up. So that's what we're here for, and let's get to that now. So hey, so like I said, this is the review and retrospective, so let's get into this. I'm going to kind of recap what I did previously with these things as I go, and kind of bring it through my little Scrum butt process, but yeah, let's go into it. So, let's click on a slide. So, what was my plan? What was I actually trying to accomplish with this Game Jam? Well, my goal was to deliver 5 minutes of actual gameplay, using a Vagabond game ideas I designed over the past year on streams and all this kind of stuff that you'd seen previously. But that was the ultimate goal, was 5 minutes of gameplay, nothing else really. If you think about that, that's actually something I never achieved. I would always get caught up in the details of over-designing or developing and prototyping and this big, I'm going to make my masterpiece on the first shot. And so the Game Jam was an attempt to say, well, I have a time constraint of 1 month, and I'm going to get something out the door. And so that was the real goal. In terms of work tasks or work items that I assigned myself, I didn't really have any. I didn't really focus that heavily on it. I did, however, try to answer some questions for myself during the Game Jam, and that's what I would try to kind of say, if I could answer those questions, those would be the tasks I think that would get me across the finish line. So yeah, so I did some questions, and the first one was, does adding a time constraint actually help or hinder me? So that was the first question I asked myself. The second was about Godot, and actually a development question. Can I port and transfer the knowledge I had gained from the Unity game engine that I'd spent the last year kind of tinkering with and learning over to the Godot engine, more specifically Godot 3.1? And understand if my ideas and the code I was using, or at least the code design, could move itself over. And then, of course, there was the question that's kind of more of a confidence question, but am I even able to design and develop a game from start to finish? That was kind of a big one. I wasn't really sure if I could actually do it, and I was actually really worried about the Game Jam for a while. Once I started it, as soon as I said I was going to do it, it was liberating but also terrifying, because now I'm really betting on myself here, going like, well, you better do this. Like, people do this. This is a thing that is possible, so you should be able to do it, good or bad, hard or not. You got to get this thing done. So that's what I was kind of focused on. That was the other question. And lastly was, can I continue to create content while developing the game? As you may have noticed throughout the year with the streams and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube streaming and Twitch streaming and social media X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. There's so much noise and so much content creation and time out and energy that I would put into producing that content. The marketing, I guess you could put it, the social media, the conversation that I was having about the game, talking about the game, took up more time than the actual game development. And I didn't have a game yet. But I like doing this stuff. I like doing the vlog. I like tweeting. I like the little video editing. I like the pre-post and the pre-prod and prod and post-prod. I just love this idea of generating this content. And I have fun doing it. But if it's getting in the way of the game, what's the point? Like, I'm just talking to myself in my own little echo chamber, but this thing that I'm one day going to do, and I've done enough of that in my life to know that I need to kind of get myself focused. So the idea was, can I actually create content without distracting myself from the game? That was it. Those were the big tasks, and let's review it. Let's just talk about what I actually did accomplish, because at the end of the day, boom, I actually accomplished it. I got a game out the door. Car Scientist is released, and it's amazing. I still am a little bit shocked that I see people have downloaded it and played it. I've gotten some comments through the Game Jam, because it's a month-long feedback loop, so there's a whole thing around that. That's really cool, and I'm actually hearing feedback from people, and that's amazing. People that I don't know. Very similarly to when I'd have people join the old Mixer stream, like Stilterfish, and people would come by and like comment on what was going on. It was really cool to see that actually happen, but without engaging them through social media. It was just by participating and submitting something in a group forum. Very cool stuff. So in terms of what about those questions I asked? Well, does adding a time constraint help or hinder me? Well, it definitely helped me. So not just because the end justifies the means, but the constraint, the time box constraint, is something I'm familiar with. I'm a software developer, cloud architect. I've been in the software development business for a very long time, for my age group, I guess. I don't know, for about 10 to 15 years, somewhere along there. And time is one of those things that I've always taken very seriously when it comes to work. And understanding there's trade-offs. You can't always if you have unlimited time, you're never going to get anything done, because you have no urgency to finish it. There's no end point. You just keep on throwing time at it, and it'll never get done. So in this case, it forced me to think of my tasks and what I needed to get accomplished over the course of the month, and time box myself. So for development, I time boxed myself by about 15 days, or half of it, knowing that about one half of that was going to get cut off because I was at a conference. But then after that, I had to really time box stuff like the design period, where I'm like, can I make, now that I got these systems working, assuming I had them working, now that I have them working, can I actually turn that into a game that people could play, And then from there, it's a bit of a polishing time to actually upload and share the game and get it out the door. So it really forced my hand and my mentality to really get that all together and get something done, rather than endlessly thinking about where I needed to go and what this thing could be. Right? I got something done, and I know what it is, rather than what it can be. Do the ideas from developed in Unity port over to the Godot engine? And the answer is yes. I even actually used the same public domain assets from Kenny.nl in the game, so it actually had the same look and feel to it. No animations. I didn't get fancy with anything. But that actually proved to be a bit more taxing on the development side, and more specifically, I had to relearn the tool set, which was to be expected. And I didn't end up using C# again. I ended up using a GD script, or a Godot script, I guess, or GD script, because it was a full-featured language. The C# support in Godot is being finalized, and it will be out for 3.2. I'm using 3.12, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't hit some weirdness of when I'm reading through documentation. So I kind of went with the lowest common denominator, the long-term service release, and that was GD script. And a language is a language is a language. They all have the same they all have their own little quirks, but at the end of the day, they're all kind of the same. So I applied a lot of that knowledge, and I really liked working in Godot. It was a really great time, and GD script was a really friendly language. It's I'm learning Python 2. So, or not Python 2, but Python 3, but Python as well. So it's very familiar to that world. But yeah, it was. There were some challenges though. More specifically, relearning the toolset, which is to be fair, but and also relearning the debugging methodology. I have a mindset of how I should debug, and the Godot editor it's good. It does the job. It's just not my preference. It feels very bloaty, very big IDE, very big Visual Studio, and that's not a bad thing. That's just a preference thing. But I had to kind of relearn how to debug code again, and it's just another tool set, another additional bit of work to do during the game jam. But it is possible to port everything over, and I managed to get it done. Am I even able to design and develop some kind of game from start to finish. And yeah, there's a game out the door and people are telling me about it. Some positive and some constructive feedback has been great. So absolutely I can. So that was a good question to answer. So confidence boosted, and I'm feeling pretty good about the whole thing. And lastly, can I continue to create content while just developing the game, or is it just too distracting? So in this case, what I did was I picked the thing that I wanted to do the most, which was video. And I picked one medium, which was YouTube, just because YouTube is video, it's ubiquitous. And the vlog actually was very helpful in my development process. That was unexpected. I was worried about it being a distraction, but by picking the vlog and not formalizing it, just kind of sitting down and dumping my brain out into a camera, into a microphone, it really forced me to center myself and take a moment at the end of the night when I accomplished something, or before I started working on it, or whatever, to center myself and think about what I was doing, what I was accomplishing, and moving forward. Very similar to the daily or the weekly scrums I was doing before, but way less structured, just more of a brain dump. And because of it, the fact that it was informal, because that it forced me to sit down and catch my breath, it ended up being hugely helpful, because I realized, I had to do a vlog at day 15. I'm like, this is the time box, this is that moment. So it forced me to take a step out and report back to the stakeholders. It acted exactly like a scrum, just way less formal, and I was able to do them all in less than an hour. So that's from cuts to being able to reuse all my assets and stuff that I've developed over the last year, do cuts and do everything in Blender, and then upload and get it up onto YouTube. And I have kind of a content pipeline for it. So it really worked out well, and it really helped the game actually get over the finish line. And then I bring you Car Scientists. Like, this is the title screen. It's like I say, it's not fancy, it's not polished, it's not perfect, but it's mine. I made this thing. See, look at that. Here we go. A Vagabond Game Adventure by David West. That's me. I did this. That's my little avatar, and I'm holding this thing. Like, this is crazy that I actually got this thing done. And I'm just so proud of myself, and I have so many thoughts, and that's why I've taken so long to get this video done. So I wanted to center myself, really think about where I wanted to go with it, and what I wanted to do, and what I've learned out of this process, and where to take it. But with that, let's actually see a demo of this, because yeah, demos are awesome, and we should actually see this game in action. So this is a demo for Car Scientist, the game I released on itch.io as part of the GitHub Game Off 2019 Game Jam. I just want to give you a quick walkthrough, and you can see here it's just a top-down exploration game that's very narrative focused. And you can see here I've walked up to a bag, and this is the entire core mechanic of the game, where you need to explore your world and kind of interact with it through dialogue. And I've used the Ink engine to provide an ability to not only maintain my game state through dialogue, but also to allow for myself to make choices or the player to make choices and stuff like that. So what we're seeing here is I'm kind of going through the car, and this is what I think is one of the weaker parts of the game. Now, it was a game jam, so it's just kind of experimenting, but this is a little too narrative heavy. And at this point, what I'm trying to do is go through the car manual to learn about the weird smelling canister looking thing that was in that bag that smelled a lot like gas stations. So what I've done there is I've increased my skills and then gone back to the bag. I look inside, and you can see here now, I can see it's a can of gasoline. This is the first scenario where now, my car's run out of gas and I need to fill it up. And now I have the gas. Now you could end the game here at this point, but there is more to the game than that. If you explore a little bit around the world, there's actually a second sort of scenario that's involved, and you can start exploring things a little bit more. But that's the guts of the game. It's basically more of a narrative-driven thing with narrative-driven gameplay, but with a bit of an exploration element to kind of understand these different puzzles. So in the closing, now that we've seen the demo, we've seen the review of all the things, what did I actually learn from this? What's the retrospective I take away from this? Well, let's click on some stuff. At the end of the day, constraints will drive deliverables for me. And they always will. I listen to enough game design podcasts and game development podcasts, and I've been in software development long enough to know that you need to have constraints to to force one way or another. It's all about an equilibrium. It's not about having unlimited resources. Creativity, constraints, traditionally speaking, in computer science, especially in games, have driven game design and game creativity. You know, with limited 8-bit processors and limited memory and the nuances of the kind of the beginning of the computer gaming world. You saw the developers like Ralph Koster, you see Sid Meier, you see like the who else? Anyone who did the Atari 26, Mark Cerny. I can't think of his name. Guy who did E.T. game, but he did a bunch of other ones too for the Atari. It drove amazing creativity and nuance to that stuff. It's really cool. And so the constraints, I don't know why I never thought of this before, but constraints really need to be there for me to get something done. And I'm going to take that moving forward. Social media is my friend. It does center me, and it makes me feel a lot more like me while I'm doing this process. I'm using it primarily to document all this. Why? Because 2 reasons. One, I like sharing community. Community has been a critical role in success in my career, professional career, as a software developer and now architect. And as I go into this new area, I think I need to reach out and share, because there's so many different stories. No story is the same, and I never found a story quite like mine. Similar, but not quite the same. Different goals, different drive, different conditions, and yours will be different than mine too. But sharing it, I think, may be helpful to others, but I also know it helps me. It definitely helps me because you could argue the whole marketing angle. I mean, I'm sharing it, I'm trying to get games out, but it also really helps me. It gets me a conversation with others, people that I don't get to see daily, people that I just kind of don't, that have more experience or possibly less experience, to give me their opinions and let me reflect on what they're saying. And also, like I said, it centers me, forced me to really think about what I'm working on and what do I need to do next and where do I need to go. And this is going to be a thing I continue to do. I really liked using the neutral tool sets, and by neutral I mean I used Inky, I used a tile maps tool, and those are the two big things. Then I used Godot engine. So Godot, for starters, works on every platform, no issue, right? And that being said, I'm a Windows developer. That's the big one. But using Inky as my text writing tool for writing dialogue to write ink script took me out of the development environment. It really did let me put the designer hat on and really focus on designing stuff. Now, there were some challenges with that, because again, now my problem is integrating the content I produce in tool number 1 into Godot, so Inky into Godot. I use the tile mapping tool that's built into Godot, and it's a good tool, but it's yet another tool, and that knowledge doesn't transfer like Inky. Inky, I can reuse that. I can produce this artifact, this ink script, compiled ink script, and reuse it in other projects or other platforms or other things. With Godot, I can't reuse the tile map in the graphics editor, but there is an alternative to that, which is tiled, and I've started playing with that. I already knew that, but it was just another thing on there, and I learned the Unity engine as well, because there's a whole thing about porting that output into the game. But when I'm in the game development environment, it's really about taking that content and that design and taking it and applying rules and logic to it to actually make something. So yeah, that was that's where I'm going to go with that. But I like the neutral tool sets because it, like I said, really makes things easier on the designer side. I got to do a lot of that, but then, like you said, the technology problems become a little bit harder because of the porting aspect of taking data from one system to another. But, I digress. I think it's a better method. I'm going to try that next. And open source tools feel good. I liked using all the open source stuff. I realized actually all of my software that I was using for this game was open source. So, and it was open source game jam, which is kind of cool. So you look at my game was open source. What else? Godot is open source. Inky is open source. All these pieces are open source. So it's really cool to be using that. And there's not just because it feels good and like, oh, I'm using free software, I'm sticking it to the man. There's nothing to do with that. It's really like I realized using especially like the InkGD asset library that I use in Godot to link up everything. I was able to dive into the tool set and actually triage problems with the tool. So for example, I actually think I found a bug in InkGD, and I am going to go back and report it and actually help debug it and provide that. I'm a big proponent for that stuff and actually contributing back. I just couldn't do it during the game jam. I had a timeline. But when I look at that and that tool set, that I was able to actually diagnose and get into the tool code and go, well, hold on, like this shouldn't be reacting this way. Like, where is this going wrong? And I found a workaround. It worked out fine. The game's out. But it was a thing of like, it was really nice to be able to go into the code and know and not have to wait for a forum post from a developer going, oh yeah, you know, that's not supposed to happen. So we'll get a patch out sometime in the next 3 to 6 months for that with that bug. Thanks for logging it. This was more I could actually look at the code, triage, and actually potentially put a fix in for myself while a pull request was being accepted or anything like that. So it really felt good, and it really felt like I had control over my learning or my new environment of that is game development. This is the last thing I realized. This is kind of a last minute one that I realized last night. Is that planning and reviewing and retrospecting these videos and this content and this time takes time, and that's okay. One of my biggest problems is I always think I have to be on this tight schedule, and I have to be, you know, they have to be back to back for 4-week sprints, and you know, you end on a Friday, you start on a Monday, but this isn't my full-time job. And on top of that, when you look at a real life agile setting, people take time. The teams take time to reflect. They do a retrospective, they do a review, they do a planning system, they do planning poker. They spend time analyzing and figuring out what they have to do. It's not just some passive thing they do on the side of their desk. It's something they actually intentionally get done. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work. And I need to do the same thing. Taking this last little bit of time here, just playing some game jam games and thinking about where I want to go with it, like that's okay. There's a bit of in my mind, there's a bit of a battle waging between productivity versus are you being just lazy or are you just being distracted by content? I'm like, no. This is me reflecting and planning, and I have a plan. Like I said, this is me centering myself to share that reflection, and the plan's gonna come next. Not today, but in another video or something. And that's it. That's the end. We finished it. We got to the end. And that's going to be the end of this playlist for now. There is going to be a plan moving forward, so that'll be good. But that's the end of the slides. That's the end of this video slide deck. That's the end of all of this. My first game jam was a resounding success. I am so happy with the game jam and what I was able to accomplish and how this makes me feel. Am I going to become a game jam aficionado? Absolutely not. They're very time consuming. And this one, the reason I actually picked this one is it was very long and it was something I could do remote, and there was no in-present things. And I know there's lots of game jams like that where I can just contribute. I'm a little bit too erratic to be able to consistently do that. And I don't think I'm at a level of maturity that I'm willing to actually risk that on other people or push that on other people. So I kind of have to do this my own way, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm hoping they participate in the Game Off Game Jam 2020 when that comes around next November. But yeah, I have a plan for this outside of the next Game Jam, and I'm looking forward to sharing that. I'm not sure how I'm going to share it's going to be, but it will be on YouTube. That much I know. The YouTube thing is going to keep going, and there'll be regular content. I have no idea what the schedule is going to be. I have no idea where I'm going to go with this. But I do need to continue these vlogs and sharing these ideas because these all bubble up in my mind and I need to share them. And so expect to see development and game development related content on YouTube. And that's what you can expect to see. And yeah. So if you've been along for the whole ride, thank you so much. If this is the first time you've watched it, thank you so much. At the end of what I'd like to say is awesome. If you do me a favor and have yourself a pleasant day and or evening, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks, and take care.